On this Friday night, Canada Post workers on job action. The disruptions to the struggling postal service despite avoiding a full-blown strike for now.
That means some mail will not be delivered.
As negotiations between both sides remain stalled. The alleged mishandling of billions in federal funding meant for Indigenous companies. The latest calls for change in a Global News investigation. Plus, Trump's crackdown on elite universities, the fears pushing American scholars into Canada.
I am terrified that the U.S. is headed to civil war.
As Harvard's international students become the latest targets. And for the lovers and the dreamers.
Stay connected to your dreams, no matter how big.
The graduation message from the world's most beloved frog.
Global National, reporting tonight. Nitu Garcha.
Good evening and thanks for joining us. The prospect of another mass Canada Post shutdown has been avoided for now, but stalled labor negotiations have sparked the first round of job action from the union representing some 55,000 postal workers. The Crown Corporation is warning of service delays for millions of Canadians as both sides seem stuck at an impasse in the months-long negotiations. Heidi Petracek has our top story tonight on what this could mean for you.
This Nova Scotia publisher was waiting to see what would happen Friday before sending out its mail.
We actually have a big stack of royalties right now that we've been kind of waiting to send because we haven't known.
That stack will go out now, but it's uncertain what will happen next in the long-standing dispute.
Anytime it's looming, of course, it's stressful.
The country's 55,000 postal workers are still on the job, but their union has told them don't do overtime. Legal job action meant to apply pressure without a walkout after brief talks Thursday night failed. Canada Post says that could mean mail delays, and this union representative says some routes simply can't be completed without the extra hours.
That means some mail will not be delivered, unfortunately. But I kind of asked the question, why would the routes be overstructured to begin with?
Both sides say they want to talk, but aren't. Canada Post's latest offer includes wage increases adding up to more than 13% over 4 years. The union's biggest concern, the Crown Corporation's plan to increase part-time positions.
Trying to attack the full-time workforce in the post office.
If we can't make the changes that we're looking for right now, our future becomes more and more bleak.
And while there are alternatives to the mail service for some,
in rural and remote communities, there's often a dearth of services. This is an essential universal public service that has a mandate beyond just economics.
When postal workers went on strike late last year, Ottawa intervened, partly in response to public pressure during the busy holiday mailing season. So far, the federal government hasn't said much about the dispute this time. The minister responsible, Patty Haidu, only encouraging the two sides to talk. Nitu.
All right, Heidi Petracek in Halifax. Thanks, Heidi. Prime Minister Mark Carney and some of his most senior ministers met in Ottawa today with top U.S. delegates. The 5 American senators are all members of the influential Senate Committee on Foreign Relations. The meeting was arranged at the request of the Trump administration, and as David Aiken reports, strengthening support for a strong partnership was high on the agenda.
It's the first time in 5 years that a delegation of U.S. senators has come to Ottawa to meet a prime minister, and they arrive bearing no illusions about the Canada-U.S. relationship.
It is not like we are naive about how hard this has been, especially the border states. Every single day we feel it. We know it's been bad, but we just want to get to a better place, and that's why we're here today.
The Canadians were happy to host them.
We had a great set of meetings.
After meeting with Foreign Affairs Minister Anita Anand, Defense Minister David McGuinty, and Industry Minister Melanie Joly, the senators sat down with the Prime Minister.
We discussed security and economic issues. I think it's very important. It was both important substantively and symbolically. I think it was very good that they came up, a bipartisan group.
The Republican among the group, North Dakota's Kevin Cramer, said it was hard to deal with Justin Trudeau, but so far not with Trudeau's successor.
Donald Trump was a transformational president. You have here a transformational prime minister. 2 business guys. They've no business.
Trump's tariffs were a key focus of conversation, and the senators believe their trip to Ottawa will help fire up colleagues back in Washington.
our hope is we want to pursue Congress reinserting itself when it comes to our powers with regard to tariffs.
What we can do is take back what we've heard here, the positive messages that we've heard, and I think sharing that with our colleagues in the Senate and in the House will be very important.
Ultimately, though, the state of the relationship rests in the hands of Donald Trump and Mark Carney, and they're next scheduled to meet at the G7 summit in Alberta in 3 weeks. Neithu.
All right, David Aiken in Ottawa. Thanks, David. Following recent tensions with the White House, Canada's newly minted energy minister Tim Hodgson was in Calgary today, promising to bridge divisions and drive development of natural resources. Hodgson says under his watch, Canada will remain a reliable global supplier of oil and gas. Heather Yurex-West reports.
I want to be very clear. In the new economy we are building, Canada will no longer be defined by delay. We will be defined by delivery.
In a room full of Calgary business leaders and oil sands CEOs, Canada's new natural resources and energy minister did his best to set the stage for a relationship reset.
I went to my first cabinet meeting on Wednesday, and I got on a plane Wednesday night and went to Regina. That's a signal, guys.
While the minister stopped short of making any specific commitments on calls to repeal policies like the emissions cap or Bill C-69, the hour-long speech seemed to go over well.
There is some repair and some trust building that has to happen given the challenges of the last 10 years, I would argue. But I think that he's definitely someone who understands how to get things done.
The former investment banker has experience in the energy sector, having served on the boards of Calgary-based Meg Energy and Ontario's Hydro One. Experience he'll need to draw on for a tough job ahead to pacify flaring feelings of Western alienation and a separatist movement gaining ground.
We're optimistic about the opportunities because of what's said. But talk is cheap, and Albertans expect action. So we expect action from the federal government, and we're very hopeful for that.
While Minister Hodgson is being met with optimism in Alberta, Premier Danielle Smith has expressed concerns with Carney's environment cabinet pick. Julie DeBruson previously worked under the polarizing Stephen Guilbeault. Still, DeBruson seems willing to prioritize relations with the West. She has a meeting planned with her Alberta counterpart next week. Neetu?
Heather Yurex-West in Calgary. Thanks, Heather. In the U.S., a federal judge is blocking an attempt by the Trump administration to revoke the ability of one of America's top universities to recruit international students. The effort to eliminate foreign enrollment at Harvard is the latest in a series of escalating clashes between the Ivy League school and the White House. As Jackson Proskow reports, the fate of thousands of international students, including hundreds of Canadians, now hangs in the balance.
America's oldest and wealthiest university says it's the victim of a campaign of retribution led by the White House after the Trump administration moved to ban international students from attending, claiming Harvard has permitted anti-American, pro-terrorist agitators on campus.
You know, they're anti-Semitic or they're something. We don't want troublemakers here.
Harvard called the move unlawful, saying it imperils the futures of thousands of students. A judge agreed and temporarily blocked the government's move.
I love Harvard, and I think it's a place where I want to continue to be at. And I think the Trump administration is trying to prevent international students that make Harvard what it is from attending.
International students like Canadian Thomas Mate are left in limbo, unsure if they'll be able to return for the fall semester or if they'll have to find another school on short notice.
The administration, they're attacking people's First Amendment rights. They are trying to undermine higher education.
Of the roughly 6,800 foreign students at Harvard, Canadians make up the second largest group, with 751 students, including the daughter of Prime Minister Mark Carney.
The amount of uncertainty here injected into the lives of real people is just absolutely extraordinary.
The ongoing feud has already seen the Trump administration cut $2.6 billion in federal grants from Harvard. The school has refused to cave to White House demands and insists it's addressing the concerns.
I would say that at Harvard, we have a real problem with anti-Semitism. We take it very seriously, and we're trying to address it.
The White House plans to appeal the injunction and push ahead with the ban on international students, suggesting it will only back down if Harvard turns over records on all foreign students within 72 hours, including footage of on-campus protests. Jackson Proskow, Global News, Washington.
The Trump administration's attack on top U.S. universities seems to be benefiting some Canadian institutions. As Jeff Semple reports, the White House offensive is pushing some of America's brightest minds to look north.
This is what democracy looks like.
The Trump administration is at war with elite American universities, slashing funding and arresting international student activists.
I now ask myself, what would I do if ICE comes, if guys in balaclavas come into my classroom looking for my students while I'm teaching?
Marcy Shore is an American professor who teaches the history of authoritarianism and fears her country is presently on a dangerous path.
I am terrified that the U.S. is headed to civil war, and I see that the checks and balances are not working. We are like the people on the Titanic, absolutely convinced that our ship can't sink.
Rather than go down with the ship, Shore and her family chose to relocate. The tenured professor at Yale is now a faculty member at the University of Toronto.
And I feel quite a bit of guilt about it. And I know that it's a very privileged position that, we had this very nice landing place because I feel like I can speak here.
Would you feel comfortable saying these things if you were still working in the United States?
I like to think I would. I don't know.
She's not alone. A recent survey of American scientists found 3/4 were considering leaving the country, and Canada is the destination of choice.
We cannot miss this opportunity.
Toronto's University Health Network is one of several Canadian organizations and provincial health ministries launching recruitment campaigns, targeting foreign physicians and scientists.
We have the expertise.
UHN has already received hundreds of responses, the vast majority from the U.S.
These people who are really applying from the best places in the world.
The president of UHN is calling on the federal government to increase funding for scientific research to ensure a U.S. brain drain is Canada's gain. Jeff Semple, Global News, Toronto.
The U.S. president's latest tariff threats are taking aim at the European Union and smartphone makers. Donald Trump is calling for 50% tariffs on the EU and 25% tariffs on companies such as Apple that make smartphones overseas.
It would be also Samsung and anybody that makes that product, otherwise it wouldn't be fair. Now, again, when they build their plant here, there's no tariff.
iPhones are currently made in enormous factories overseas, and analysts warn moving production to the U.S. would double their cost.
300,000 plus employees, many of whom live on or near the site. They are some of the most productive technology production employees in the world. To replicate that anywhere else on Earth is almost impossible. It would drive the cost of an average iPhone up to $5,000, $6,000 or more.
Analysts also say Canadian smartphone prices would rise as a direct or indirect result of Trump's tariffs. Global News has learned the federal government is facing a human rights complaint over a multi-billion-dollar program meant to set aside government work for Indigenous-owned and controlled companies. At the heart of the complaint is roughly $1.6 billion worth of annual contracts the government is alleged to have awarded without requiring bidders to prove their Indigenous identity. Melissa Ridgen brings us this Global News exclusive. Melissa?
Neetu, Canada's procurement strategy for Indigenous business takes 5% of all government contracts and sets them aside for First Nations, Inuit and Métis companies. It's billed as economic reconciliation to boost Indigenous-led businesses, but the program has been labeled a boondoggle by many.
The Algonquin Anishinaabe Nation Tribal Council represents several Ontario and Quebec communities. In its complaint to the Human Rights Commission, the council claims so-called pretendians, non-Indigenous companies, are attracted to take advantage of the program and its lucrative contracts, and the government knows this. It goes on to allege the federal government has done little to plug the holes that have allowed non-Indigenous people to fake their way into the Indigenous Business Directory. Getting on this list is how to access contracts as an Indigenous supplier.
It's absolutely commonly known from us, the Indigenous, that there are people out there who are not Indigenous that have these businesses claiming they're Indigenous.
Plastics manufacturer La Flèche is one of 3,000 companies currently on the Indigenous Business Directory. A group of First Nations industry experts endorsed by the Assembly of First Nations wants Ottawa to hand over control of that list to ensure they're all actually Indigenous.
The devolvement of the IBD
to an Indigenous organization. In this case, that would be the First Nations Procurement Authority.
Something many Indigenous business leaders want to see. In a statement, LaFlèche says we have enough barriers to deal with. We do not need non-First Nations or pretenders withering away our rights or taking away the opportunities given to us to make our communities better.
We asked Canada's new Indigenous Services Minister, Mandy Galmasti, if that's going to happen, but didn't hear back from her by deadline. The Auditor General tells Global News their investigation into this is expected to be completed by fall 2026. Need to.
Okay, Melissa Ridgen in Winnipeg. Thanks, Melissa. A federal riding in Newfoundland and Labrador flipped from the Liberals to the Conservatives today following a judicial recount called nearly 2 weeks ago. The Liberals' Anthony Germain won the rural riding of Terra Nova, the Peninsulas, by 12 votes on election night. But after Elections Canada's validation process, it was determined Tory candidate Jonathan Rowe actually won the riding by that same number of votes. And the Conservatives solidified their victory in the Ontario riding of Windsor-Tecumseh Lakeshore. A judicial recount there confirming the Tories' win over the Liberal challenger today by just 4 votes. The Liberals now have 169 seats in the House of Commons, 3 shy of a majority. The latest on the World Junior Hockey sexual assault trial. Coming up, why prosecutors are focusing on statements made by a former teammate not charged in the case. A key witness was back on the stand at the sex assault trial of 5 former World Junior Hockey players. Prosecutors focused on the former teammate's claims that he lacks memory about what happened in a London, Ontario hotel room nearly 7 years ago. Nathaniel Dove was in court, and a warning: some of the content is graphic. Nathaniel?
Neithu, former World Junior Hockey player Brett Howen resumed his testimony Friday. He already told the court he can't remember the events of 2018, so the Crown prosecutor had him read statements he already gave to the London Police and Hockey Canada. He told the Crown he knew the statements to be true when he said them. About a week after the alleged assaults, Howen, who was not charged, sent a text to another former player describing Dylan Dubé slapping EM's butt so hard it looked like it hurt. The judge previously ruled the text inadmissible, but has given the Crown another chance to pursue an alternative avenue to have them included as evidence, a decision that will be made on Monday. A woman known only as EM accuses players Dylan Dubé, Michael McLeod, Corey Hart, Alex Fermenton, and Cal Foote of having non-consensual group sex with her in a London hotel room in 2018. They all pleaded not guilty. Howen, their former teammate and current NHL forward, says he was in the hotel room for some or all of the alleged assaults. 4 years later, he told Hockey Canada that he saw a player slap EM, and that's when he left. He said, "What I'm trying to say is, once I seen that thing where I was really uncomfortable, that's when I, wanted to leave." The Crown clarified, "And that was the slap in your memory?" Howen replied, "Yeah." 2 weeks after the alleged assaults, he told Hockey Canada that while leaving with a couple of guys, quote, "I remember hearing her cry, and I didn't know why. I was like, okay, this can't be good." A defense lawyer not connected to the case says the judge will take a wide look to evaluate Howen's reading of the past.
The judge's determination of what that evidence is worth based upon all of the evidence as a whole.
The Crown asked Howen again Friday if he remembers any details about the slap. Howen said, quote, "Not all the details, just feeling uncomfortable. I remember that." The defense will have their chance to cross-examine Howen on Monday. Neithu?
Okay, Nathaniel Dove in London, Ontario. Thanks, Nathaniel. A taste of freedom ahead. Ukrainian and Russian prisoners return home after the biggest swap of the war.
Slava Ukraini!
Героям слава! A major prisoner swap between Ukraine and Russia today. Each side returned about 390 soldiers and civilians to begin the largest exchange since the start of Russia's war more than 3 years ago. Both countries have committed to return 1,000 prisoners each. The U.S. Justice Department has reached a tentative deal with Boeing to avoid criminal prosecution over fraud charges tied to 2 deadly 737 MAX crashes. The agreement would see Boeing pay over $1.1 billion in fines and victim compensation. The company would also invest more than $455 million to improve safety and compliance programs. The tragedies in Indonesia in 2018 and Ethiopia 5 months later killed 346 people, including 18 Canadians. Next, sage advice for university students.
Dreams are how we figure out where we want to go, and life is how we get there.
An encouraging message from Kermit the Frog. He says he waved and he whistled, but this Norwegian man could do nothing to stop the arrival of an uninvited guest. He watched as a massive container ship ran aground right next to his neighbor's home.
Jeg har alltid sovet godt om natten.
The homeowner was none the wiser. He says he slept through the entire thing as the ship came crashing ashore just meters from his home. Norwegian police are blaming a sleeping crew member for the crash. And a group of college grads got a unique send-off from a beloved Muppet. The one and only Kermit the Frog delivered the commencement speech at the University of Maryland yesterday. The cheery Muppet offered these words of wisdom.
Rather than jumping over someone to get what you want, consider reaching out your hand and taking the leap side by side, because life is better when we leap together.
It was Kermit's first commencement address in nearly 30 years. The university says it chose Kermit to honor the legacy of Muppet creator Jim Henson, who graduated from Maryland in 1960. And that is Global National for this Friday. I'm Neetu Garcha. Tonight's Your Canada showcases Parksville, BC, London, Ontario, and Colesdale Park, Saskatchewan. Keep them coming. Send your pictures of Canadian pride to globalnational@globalnews.ca. Thanks so much for watching and hope to see you here again tomorrow.